There is so much noise around the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, but most of it is useless because no matter how strongly you feel about it, just like we saw with Tucker Carlson and Bill O'Reilly, it's not illegal to fire somebody for what they say. You just can't charge them with a crime for it. So then the question becomes, is the situation with Jimmy Kimmel different? And in this case, without hesitation, I can tell you the answer is yes. But I didn't know this until I read an article buried in Politico, written by a law professor at the University of Chicago named Aziz Huq. He believes Jimmy Kimmel should sue the Trump administration and that he can win, and that would hold up all the way up to the Supreme Court. At the heart of the reason why is the relationship between government policies and private actions, and his perspective is rooted in a case that was decided only last year by this exact Supreme Court. That case dealt with the rights of social media companies to suppress misinformation around a very specific and very controversial jab. You know the one. Now, that case against the Biden administration was dismissed because even though the Republicans on the court wanted to side with the plaintiffs were unable to prove specific causation between the Biden administration's policies and any actual suppression of speech by social media companies. Basically, no one could prove that the Biden administration took specific direct or indirect action to try to force a social media company to suppress speech. In this case, Amy Coney Barrett sided with Biden and said there was a lack of specific causation findings with respect to any discrete instance of content moderation. Like I said, no link. However, in this case with Jimmy Kimmel, it's the exact opposite. Not only is there a link, it's a 10,000-ton anchor chain. Brendan Carr, the FCC commissioner appointed by Trump, said on air that ABC needed to punish Jimmy Kimmel or face consequences. He said, and I quote, "These companies can find ways to take action on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead." And as a result, it looks like the FCC is both going to change monopoly rules and approve the merger between Nexstar and Tegna, two massive businesses that own tons of ABC affiliates across the country. In other words, to keep money flowing for everyone, they had to keep Trump happy, so he uses government to help them instead of to block them. Not only is there an obvious link between the government's choices and the actions of a private employer to censor speech, you'd be a clown to call it anything but airtight. But how airtight is this? Just last year, Samuel Alito himself said, and I quote, "Government officials may not coerce private entities to suppress speech." And in another case last year, Alito said the First Amendment prohibits government officials from relying on the threat of invoking legal sanctions and other means of coercion to achieve the suppression of disfavored speech. Meanwhile, Neil Gorsuch said that a plaintiff could win if they could prove that the government's actions, when viewed in context, could be reasonably understood to convey a threat of adverse government action in order to punish or suppress the plaintiff's speech. Taken together, what they're saying is the government cannot directly or indirectly coerce the suppression of speech, and in the event they do, both Jimmy Kimmel and ABC could have standing to sue. And honestly, if Kimmel files this suit, it's a win-win, because the Supreme Court either sides against the Trump administration and confirms that now and into the future the Trump administration is barred from punishing critics, or the Supreme Court flips on itself and establishes a new precedent that could allow future Democratic presidents to do exactly to Fox News and Newsmax what Trump has done to Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert. And while I think we would all prefer to side with free speech, I could also get used to the idea of a world without Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity. Like I said, win-win.